Let me ask you something. How would your life be different if you followed your passions without fear? If you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure about your path in midlife, you're in the right place. Today, I'm joined by Robin Kulesza, who helps midlife women recognize and repair patterns of disconnection, disruption, and discontent so they can reimagine the next phase of life by honoring their authentic selves. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you because I have so many questions for you.
I love talking about midlife women, so
So
I'm
do
ready.
I. So, you decided to reinvent yourself in midlife. You had this amazing military career. How did that all transpire?
Well, without going into all the details, my original plan was to be a social worker as when I was in college, and I had a brother who wanted to be an Air Force pilot. And I was feeling like lost in college. I needed some excitement and adventure. And I kind of blamed him. He said, I think this would fill that need for you. And so that's how I got off track for about 21 years doing. But, it's interesting. I definitely had a lot of adventure, amazing experiences in the military, but there was always this longing inside to know the people more than about the machine I was dealing with, right? So I always went back to what makes them who they are, why do they do what they do? And so as I was approaching that natural time of when many people retire, about 20 years in the military, and my kids are about to finish high school, I just felt like, wow, this seems like the time to make a pivot. Who am I? What's going to really make me happy moving forward? And that's how I ended up getting into counseling. And that was the start of the last 12 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you learned a lot though in your years with the military. You specialize in resilience with midlife women. So what were you able to take from that long career into transitioning into coaching?
There's so much, so many life lessons. If you start out at the bottom, you always want to try to find someone with a lot of experience. So I learned that early on. And I even had a mentor who wrote me a whole list of lessons to follow for the next 20 years. And it's funny because I had just found it and looked it over. And it was things like um, always do the best you can wherever you are at the moment. Don't burn a bridge unless you need to. Things like that. And I found by doing those exact things that I would push through really tough moments, and then it was like it just came back tenfold to me later on. And when I had fear, I pushed through, and then my resilience continued to build. And I thought, wow, no one teaches us these things. You just have to live them. Um, so I just felt like I have so much I just want to say and I want to share. If people haven't been through things that were hard or that were just scary and they just found ways to do them, you just do it.
Mhm.
That's the main lesson, like if I was talking about trust recently. How do you rebuild trust? You just have to start trusting someone again. And the same with resilience. How do you do hard things? You just start doing them.
Do you think that being a woman in the military also gave you an extra edge in the sense that you maybe had to be extra resilient?
Yeah. I'm wondering if I should share a funny story with you.
Yes, please.
So I came up in a time when there was all kinds of news out there about should women fly in combat? Should women be assigned to combat roles? And it was all over the news. And so I just felt this intense desire to be one of those women who was going to break some barriers. And I was the first female pilot in my flying squadron. And looking back, I don't think I was nervous, but I was just kind of like, well, I was unsure what it would be like. Um, And the first day I was given a tour, and there in the lunchroom was a full-size mock-up of a woman doing a hula dance. It was plugged in and she had the grass skirt going, and I thought, "Oh." So it was definitely a culture shift for them and for me, and I had to really think about how do I wanna handle this? I wanna be accepted, but I also wanna stand for something too. And so that was my introduction to, who am I gonna be? And I decided I'm just gonna be myself,
Yeah.
and that's worked out well.
Good for you. So you clearly have faced some kinds of fear
Yeah.
in your life and in your career. And now you help women face their fears, particularly in midlife. So what would you like women to know about facing fears and overwhelm?
Think, there's so much, but the foundation of what I teach goes back to my training in trauma healing, because I started out as a trauma therapist and an EMDR therapist specifically. That's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, a very long word. But basically, we look at, how are we different in how we deal with the world, how we face stress or problems, and a lot of it goes back to our programming that started when we were babies, growing up, the messages we learned. How did we keep ourselves safe? How did we stay attached to people or connected? And like you and I could have the same situation come up, but we handle it totally differently because we feel comfortable doing different things. Um, so I feel like, when fear comes up, I like to help someone figure out where is that coming from, and now what do we do about it, right? And can we change your mindset on it, or can we turn that around so it
Mhm.
becomes more of a positive for you?
EMDR is something that I do have a little bit of experience in from the patient's side. After we lost Katie and I returned back to the workplace, I still currently work 1 day a week in oncology as a radiation therapist. And I had a patient situation go sideways. And it was a code blue situation. And it nearly ended my career
Mm,
only because of what I felt inside. And I sought out a colleague, actually a friend who works as an EMDR and trauma therapist. And I said, I need some help because I don't know that I can continue my work. I don't know if I can go back to work. And went to see her for a number of times using the EMDR. And at the end of it all, it was the reframing because for me, I went in with doubts about my own skills. I can't possibly face this situation again. I can't.
mhm,
And
right.
really, through reframing, at the end of it, came out thinking, I did everything right. I have the knowledge, I have the skills. If this were to happen on my watch again, I'd do it all exactly the same because it was all by the book and perfect. And yeah, it made me scared. And yeah, it made me nervous. And yeah, it brought up the yucky feelings of, you know, I imagined at the time this rush of what I was experiencing in the room. Like, I don't know how many doctors and nurses and like this rush of emergence, right?
Mhm.
I my brain equated it to this rush of emergence that must have happened at my daughter's car accident. I don't know why my brain connected the two, but it did. And through this work, we were able to separate the two and recognize that I am fully capable of handling the situation. So I don't know if that helps our listeners kind of understand a little bit more what can happen with EMDR, but it is such an interesting therapeutic tool.
Yeah, I love your story, and I can see just on your face how excited you are about the idea of how you changed. Um, in serious situations, yeah, it's helpful to go to a therapist, a coach, but some things that we just experience day to day, minor things, you can work through that yourself, and you can learn how to do this. What is my fear? It could be like, my fear is failure because
Mm,
I grew up feeling I had to be perfect. And so we then get to the root of why is that causing your body to go into this fight, flight, freeze mode? And what I'll do is I'll work with someone asking them, when have you been successful? And what tells you you have been, um, you were success in your job or with your children, you're a good mom. What is the evidence of that? And so we work on that, and that helps someone remember what it feels like. And that's how you kind of turn it around, like you mentioned.
hmm. It's so interesting. I think sometimes our brains get, in our own way, and
Yeah.
of recalling things or even thinking, maybe I've failed at this once before. Does it mean that I'm going to fail at this forever? No, but it's this self-talk we get in our own way.
Those little fears, I call them, they're just in there kind of hanging out,
Yeah,
waiting. And just,
exactly.
even catching yourself in the moment. I think we can do that. It can be just so many things. Are you procrastinating? There's
Mm.
probably a fear behind that. Are you feeling like an imposter at your job? Let's say there's some fear behind that. Maybe something that's happened before that has just put you into this mode of like danger, danger. The red lights are going off. And yeah, the first step is just to notice it and start asking questions about it.
So if women are at this phase, like I think both you and I are, where we're thinking, I might like to make a change. This is a good
Yeah.
time for me. What what are some good questions to ask ourselves? If we're recognizing that this is maybe a good time, where do we go from here?
I think a question I always ask is, what do you want? What do you want your life to look like, let's say in 3 years? What do you want to feel like? And, we kind of work our way backwards because if you don't know where you want to get to, how do you know what to do now, right? So for me, I knew I wanted to do work that made me feel like I was serving a purpose. I always like to help the underdog. But and I knew I hit the right thing because once I started school working on my master's degree, I loved every minute of all those classes. So, there's signs along the way that tell you you're on track. Um, but so, figure out the goal, work backwards, and then we start taking these small steps to get there. Maybe it's just, I need to get a new resume together, you know? Um, and I think if you can figure out what makes you happy, what fills that desire for purpose, you're going to figure it out. And I think, and you just look for these fears, like we talked about, that are getting in the way. Um, Opening a business brings up a lot of fears. Can I do this? What if I fail? The reality is, we just go back to our old job, So, even asking you, what's the worst thing that can happen if I make this change and it doesn't work out? It was just an experiment. It's not a failure. We're just trying different things. So again, it really goes back to mindset.
I agree. I can't remember where I heard this or read this recently, but I thought it was brilliant is that there's no such thing as mistakes. Those are
Hmm.
just stepping stones, right?
Yeah.
It's more information to help us recognize, oh, okay, well, maybe that path isn't right. So I need to
Yes.
pivot.
Yes.
It's not a failure. It's just a recorrection or an opportunity to make a recorrection.
Yeah. I have a wonderful consultant and coach, and that I got that from her. And just we're just experimenting. And you
Mm,
imagine how that sounds. How do you receive it in your body? It sounds so much nicer than you might fail, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, as midlife women, we have got all these balls in the air and we feel that we are so responsible for all of these things, right? We've got careers. Sometimes some of us have more than one career. We've got our relationships, we've got our children, maybe we've got aging parents, the household responsibilities, and on and on and on. And I think you nailed something earlier on, and that is this perfectionism thing that I think a lot of women have on some level. And I think my perception is that the more of that perfectionist tendency we have, the more frightened we are of failure, because
Mm.
that perfectionist part of ourselves can't handle the failure. So why go there? So, do you have any tips or tricks on self talk or anything that we can do to get past those thoughts?
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I'm a mom too, and mom guilt is real. It doesn't matter what stage you're in. My kids are grown, and I still have moments I struggle with that. What did I do? What didn't I teach them? Oh my gosh. Um, I think, moms, women in general, we take on so much, and maybe it's time we start showing ourselves more compassion, first of all. I'm not sure where we ever learned that we have to be perfect or we have to be able to juggle a million things at once. Really, I learned this as a single mother for many years. I had to find my village to help raise those kids. I could not be a full-time military officer living away from family with a 2 and 3-year-old. So, I think when things get difficult, you're forced to start to maybe delegate, ask for help, go see a therapist if you need to get it off your chest, see a coach. And that helped me so much, kind of chip away at that perfectionism. So I think showing yourself compassion is a big thing. Learning to slow down. Our lives are so stressful. Our culture, go, 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 go. I talk to a lot of women. They don't know what it's like to just sit down. They might sit down, but they're working on a list for something, right? But I mean, sit down and disconnect. So I always suggest journaling a few minutes a day, doing some kind of activity to get into your body more, mindfulness, meditation, yoga. Maybe you love to walk, but getting the body doing something so you can let go of what you did yesterday, what you have on your to-do list. And I think those are really good places to start. Um, yeah, and just, I talked to women, they're like, my husbands just keep asking me, go, please take a day off. They can't do it. They
Mm,
can't do it. It's really hard. So we work on
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Just curious, I love journaling too. Are there any questions, or are you a free flow journaler, or do you go in there with something with intention? How do you
I
journal?
think this is my left brain jumping in a little like I like checklist. I do like structure. So for me, I don't have the patience to probably sit and just free form write for an hour. But I ask my clients to write down one thing they're grateful for in the morning, one thing that they're proud of themselves for in the last day. They sound really simple, but it's hard sometimes for people to come up with these. One thing they want to work on or some kind of dream they're trying to manifest. So it's very simple and it can be done in 5 minutes. But then it puts you in that right frame of mind for the day. It kind of slows down your system. You can take a breath. And I would, if you haven't tried it, try it. Like anything, these are all wonderful tools, and you find the ones that work for you best.
Definitely. I really like the idea. Gratitude, man, that's a game changer. I know it can
Yeah.
sound
Yeah.
cheesy, but game changer. And then what am I proud of? That can be hard as a woman to say, yay, me.
Yes, it
I did
is.
this thing. And maybe it was just that I got the dishwasher emptied before I went to bed. Doesn't have to be monumental. Doesn't mean that you ran a marathon, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
give yourself credit for something that you did. And then, what's your dream? What are you dreaming? Or what are you hoping? Or what are you working on? It plants the right seeds. I think those are really important prompts. Thank you for sharing them.
You're welcome. Yeah, I like to keep it simple. That's my motto.
Oh, isn't that it? I think we are masters at overcomplicating just about everything.
Yeah, yeah, I can do that too.
So
But,
on
but
that note,
yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
uh, I have found in my coaching that a lot of us have unresolved trauma that, as you know, was from years ago, maybe from childhood, maybe from another part in our lives, but that can resurface in midlife. Can you speak to that and maybe why that happens and how it affects us differently at this age?
I'll give you an example. So let's say, there were like you grew up in a home that was pretty dysfunctional, and there doesn't even have to be abuse, but maybe there were things missed. Like you didn't really learn how to deal with sadness or anger. You didn't learn about emotions. So the way someone survives and copes with the world is they learn to stuff it in,
Mm,
all the hard things that happen through their life, and they get very good at it. I mean, people will tell you, I don't, I'm fine, but they're just so good at ignoring it. So I think what happens in my experience is when a lot of stress builds up over the years, midlife, there's all these things happening: menopause, empty nest, caregiving, maybe there's a divorce, so many things. Um, there's like little cracks, and some of this stuff starts to come out if it wasn't processed. And you may find yourself doing things like having a huge blow up over a small little problem. Um, Maybe you notice you're extremely fearful. You don't want your children to do anything because you're afraid, you think the worst thing's going to happen. So when someone mentions these kind of things to me, I start asking questions because often there is something that's come up now and it's getting in their way, even though they were able to put it away for so long, right?
mm. So something is breaking through the crack that was
Yes.
already there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. I almost see midlife as, I imagine somebody with this great big platter that they're carrying, right? With all the things, all the balls, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah.
And it almost just, you can only put one more thing on there or half a thing. And then that tray just, it goes sideways and something's got to give, right? We're not superhuman as much as we try to
Yeah.
think that we
I
are
love that
sometimes.
imagery. And what I love about midlife, it's that's one side of it, but then there's this whole freedom. I don't know if you
Yes,
relate to that. I felt it when my kids graduated high school. It was, I could breathe a little bit. I mean, there's still a lot of parenting to do, no matter what age our kids are, but I became pretty excited pretty quickly about the possibilities.
definitely. It
And
changes. It
yeah.
definitely changes. And I think, as anything in life, I think perspective is so huge. I was talking to somebody just yesterday about, I see perspective as a magnifying glass. And within that magnifying glass, that lens is on a hinge. So it can flip one way or it can flip the other.
Hmm.
And it's so easy when things go sideways in life or there's fear or whatever it is that we have that lens flipped. So it's worst case scenario. That's all we see. We see doom, we see gloom. But if we have kind of the open-mindedness, what if, just the curiosity, what if I flip that lens, and just look at our life situations through a different angle? you
Yeah.
know in my situation, a lot of my listeners know that we lost our daughter 8.5 years ago in a car accident, and it took me a long time. Now, this is not something that I was instantly able to do, but I would easily say that I was one of the angry moms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why my kid? She was 17 years old. She just got accepted into nursing school, all these things. She'll never get to get married and have kids and all the things. But after a period of time, I was able to take a step back and look through my magnifying glass with that flipped lens with a different perspective and reflected back to my work in oncology and reflecting back to the families that I've worked with, the families of children who
Mm-hmm.
came in for cancer care. And a lot of those families don't get 17 and a half years with their kids that are healthy and
Mhm.
happy. And so that changed my narrative in my head. That changed the narrative in the words that I spoke. And as I said, that took time, that took work, that took
Of
effort,
course.
and it
Yeah,
still does sometimes. It
right.
still takes a lot of work. But when we can get to that phase of being open to look at things through different perspective, I think that's where we can start seeing the possibilities,
I love that imagery of
right?
the flipping it, the magnifying glass.
And the
Yeah.
beautiful thing is that we are in control of that magnifying glass, nobody else, right?
Thank you for sharing that about your daughter. And I can only imagine how hard that was. But what I'm guessing is your patients or people you work with in oncology get something from you they don't get from everyone else. Because what I notice is when we go through really painful things, we have this, our empathy is just so, it's so overwhelming. And I think we see people in a different way and they feel from us those vibes. Like, I understand, I've been through hard things too. And there's like this, you don't even have to say it. You kind of feel it.
It's interesting you should say that. We won't go down this bunny hole very far, but it's so interesting to me now. And I say this to my friends who are also grieving mothers. And I said, sometimes I feel like I have a magnet. Like I just find people and they've
Exactly.
lost kids.
Yeah.
Not that long ago, I was commenting on one of my patients. She had a beautiful tattoo on her leg. And it just happened that she had that done as a memorial piece after her son died. And you're right. I think we all bring bring our lives and our learnings to our work, whatever it is that we
Mhm.
do. So one of the areas that you specialize in is helping women through divorce. Can you speak to that piece a little bit as well?
Yeah, I I've been through divorce myself, and it happened when I was in the military. So I don't know what you know about the military, but you really do sign your life over to someone. You cannot say, "Well, I've got a family commitment, I can't do it." You know where things rank as much as you care about your family. You have this mission you have to complete. So when I got divorced, I definitely felt like I couldn't talk to anyone about it in the work setting, let's say. I had a very supportive family, but they weren't nearby, and I noticed how, I hate to use the word, but I felt crazy.
Mm,
I just felt so emotionally unstable. I didn't want to appear weak. I had to stay healthy on flight status, no medication. I don't even think we talked about counseling in those days. And I just, I got to a point as a professional now, as a counselor and coach, I'm like, man, it doesn't have to be like that. It can be so much easier. And I think I looked at my experience and then hearing about these rising rates of women in their 40s and up getting divorced. Rates are going up. That I thought, I think I have something to offer here to make it easier for them.
absolutely. And meeting the women that I have in the last few years, I would say that that is a real gap in counseling services. Is not only somebody who can help you with divorce, but the midlife piece and the transitions and the fears and the overwhelm and all of these pieces that you bring so beautifully together. So, for any of our listeners, just as we start to wind down, who maybe are at a point in their lives, and it doesn't have to be divorce or anything, but maybe they're facing just this next chapter in their lives, whatever that might be. Maybe they're feeling fear, they're feeling overwhelmed. What kind of words of wisdom can you leave them with today?
I think I know I mentioned it, but I'll just go back to give yourself a break overall. Have some compassion for yourself because these things are hard. And it's okay to feel sad, to feel overwhelmed, to feel any of those emotions, right? And don't be shy about getting support. And that can be talking to your loved ones, going for professional advice, join a support group. It makes such a huge difference to be in a group where people can normalize what you're feeling. and you realize, yeah, it's not just me. And they, especially ones who've been through it and got to the other side, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm just going to I've been nodding my head here as you're talking about that. I think one of the worst feelings in the world is to feel like you're the only one going through something. I know that was a huge part of my own healing as well, is not only meeting other women who were going through child loss in my situation, but meeting women who were a few years into their journey because they gave me hope. I could
Mm.
see, a little bit of a breadcrumb trail, if you will, of what my life might look like if I choose, to do the work. I think community is so important. We were definitely wired to be connected and to be with other people going through these difficult times in life. So if our listeners want to learn more about you, your EMDR therapy, counseling, help with divorce, what have you, where can they find you online?
Well, I think the best website to go to is my coaching website. It's called Her Dawning, HER, and then the word dawning.com. And I do therapy with clients in Illinois, Texas, Florida, and South Carolina. But if you want to work with me in a coaching capacity, which is a little different than therapy, that is worldwide. So you can reach me on that website.
Fantastic. And I will make sure that that link is in the show notes as well for the listeners. Thank you so much, Robin. It has been
Thank
really
you. I've enjoyed
enlightening.
this.
I've really learned a lot from you, and maybe we can continue this conversation in another episode.
Yes, sounds great. Thank you.
All right. And to my listeners, stay well and be resilient, and we'll catch you next time.